Many ex-professional athletes are people pleasers, okay? But the thing is, a lot of the people pleasing and a lot of the choosing everyone else other than yourself, a lot of that actually came from your childhood, okay? And the thing to understand here is choosing yourself doesn't make you bad. Choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. And if you don't choose yourself and instead you continue to do everything for everyone else except yourself, who are you really abandoning? You are actually abandoning your true self. You are abandoning yourself to please others, which therefore makes your contribution to others nowhere near as contributional as it could be anyway. But it does start from the triad, mum, dad, and you, okay? Now, if mum or dad had a tendency to always please everyone else and they always put themselves last, you grew up with that as a representation of, okay, this is what good people do. This is what people do who serve others. This is what people do who care for others, etc. And potentially you may have had another parent that only chose themselves and did have some, negative types of personalities. For example, narcissistic tendencies, or they were a true narcissist. Narcissists only care about themselves. So in that context, for example, as a child, you would have grown up to believe, okay, if I choose myself, it makes me a bad person, it makes me a narcissistic person, or someone with narcissistic tendencies. And instead, if I choose everyone else and please others, then I am a good person, I am someone of service, etc. And that is how simple the story can be ingrained into you. Then on top of it, you were either a child athlete or you took your athleticism really seriously at one point in time, okay? The whole time, you were not just trying to please yourself, you're trying to please the audience, you're trying to please the judges, you are trying to please your fans, okay? And a lot of the time, you are abandoning yourself to do so. Maybe you're pushing through an injury that you shouldn't be pushing through and you know you shouldn't be pushing through. I did that. That's why I'm in the position I'm in, a reason. Also, the surgeries didn't work, but I can imagine if I got the surgeries done maybe 10 years earlier, my foot wouldn't have been nearly as messed up as it was by the time the surgeon actually got to it. But that's a perfect example of me abandoning myself and pushing through pain to please everyone else. But the last thing I was doing was pleasing myself. So those are just two examples, but that is a perfect example of how your childhood can influence your need to be a people pleaser. And then it affects you as an athlete even more so, and then it can affect you even after retiring as an ex-professional athlete. But again, who are you really abandoning? You're abandoning yourself. Now, I like to think about this. This really helps me, okay? Even as someone who is still technically young, I don't feel young, but I don't care about what anyone else thinks anymore. I used to, okay? But you see, once you realize everyone cares more about themselves than you realize that you don't need to go out and please everyone. Plus, do you really want to be liked by everyone? Do you? I definitely don't want to be liked by everyone. If I was liked by everyone, I would have to have some tendencies and types of personalities and values that just didn't align with me. I don't want to be liked by anyone anyway. And think about this. In 40, 50 years' time, my camera died, and anyway, let's just get back to it. I can't remember exactly where I dropped off. What I believe I was talking about is how, in 40, 50, 60 years, you're not going to be here anyway. Potentially the house you're living in isn't going to be here anyway. And it puts it into perspective of what really matters at the end of the day. Do you really want to waste your time and energy on people pleasing and constantly caring about what everyone else thinks? That's exhausting anyway, isn't it? And I used to be like this, okay? I did. But then there was an actual tipping point for me, okay? And unfortunately, that's where people change or heal or start to self-reflect more. But yeah, if I'm being honest, there was a tipping point for me where I was aware of this tendency and it slowly dizzled out, but it was still there, okay? And so if there was a strong emotional attachment towards someone that I truly deeply loved, or, you know, had a very strong connection towards, I would still abandon myself for them, okay? So I wouldn't abandon myself for just anybody. It was just particular people who I had a very strong connection for, a very deep sense of love, etc. Nonetheless, I abandoned myself for them, okay? And, you know, without getting too into context of the situation, you know, I was abandoning myself for them, but it was also them, okay? As in, it was a couple of people who I loved, and who, you know, I had a great connection with and I really cared for, and I still do. That's the thing. And so it was very difficult for me in this particular situation to, you know, not people please. Okay, and I did. I people pleased. I abandoned myself for them, thinking I'm doing the right thing, telling myself all of these stories about how, well, yes, I'm abandoning myself, but at least I'm not abandoning them. All of the stories, okay? I got extremely exhausted within like 2.5 hours, and I literally needed like 2 days to recover, and it brought back a lot of not so good memories, and it, you know, it really affected my mental well-being. And I already knew this because there had been scenarios before. So it's like, where's the tipping point for you? And that right there is a pure example of like evolvement and knowing what I should do and knowing what it means to people please, knowing that it means I'm going to abandon myself, yet still doing it, okay? And unfortunately, sometimes in life, you know, you need that tipping point in order to be like, no, and put your foot down. And the thing is, saying no to someone, it doesn't mean you're being a bad person at all. Saying no is standing your ground. Saying no is having healthy boundaries. Saying no is doing the opposite of abandoning yourself. And what a great representation for those other people that you do love and that you do connect with, okay? Because sometimes you will feel the need to people please other people who are people pleasers. And therefore, you're abandoning yourself to please them, and they're abandoning themselves to please you, right? And so it's like, oh, well then that just equals out to be abandonment for both. So why don't you just do what you want to do, and you just do what you want to do, and therefore neither of you are abandoning yourselves, and you'll both feel better, and you'll both have more energy, etc. Now, one thing to mention here is that, you know, you might be sitting here and be like, yeah, but I'm really scared of what everyone else is going to think if I say no, or if I put my foot down, or if I choose myself. And there might be a payoff that's negative, okay? Maybe it causes tension. Maybe it causes drama. And maybe you were the kid that was like, I don't want to cause tension and I don't want to cause drama, because if I cause tension or I cause drama, that's bad. Okay? Therefore, standing my ground is bad. And therefore, abandoning myself to please someone else is good. But the thing to understand here is, like, as an adult, you need to be okay with that tension and realize that that tension that you will create when you start to say no and you stop people pleasing and you stop abandoning yourself for everyone else, that tension is only there because of the story that you've told yourself around what it means to people please. And it's the same with them. If that person feels tension that you didn't people please, or if that person feels attacked because you didn't people please them, and they feel that way, and they feel the tension, whose tension really is it? Then it's their tension. It's a reflection of what is going on inside of them anyway. Okay? And it comes back to the very statement that you only live one life. You know, something was playing on the TV yesterday where it was like the top 5 couple of things that people would say on their deathbed or whatever it was. And one of them is, you know, I wish I stopped scrolling on my phone so much. Because when you add up all of your screen time, you realize that it's taking years off your life, right? Click off the video now. You know, it's very true. And so why would you want to live any more time or spend any more time abandoning yourself when you're the only one who gets to live in your life and in your shoes? And if you've got younger people, kids or whatever, what do you want to be a representation to them for? Surely you don't want your kids growing up people pleasing. But remember, as a kid, you know, kids view their parents as like gods, right? So you could take it into that context as well. And this is often why when people have a kid, they like change their whole life around, they get rid of all the bad habits, etc., because they know that they are the biggest representation for their kids. And again, as the example way back in the beginning, if the kid grew up believing that people pleasing is of good and it is of service and you have to abandon yourself in order to people please, and if you don't act as of service and instead all you care about is yourself, then that means you're narcissistic and that means that you're a bad person. If you're the kid that grew up believing either of those things or both of those things, perfect representation to stop being a people pleaser. You know, the other thing that's interesting is this goes into the world of judgment. So, for example, I'll get positive comments, but I'll also get negative comments. And at the end of the day, like, I don't let any of it get to me, because what's it really a reflection of? It's a reflection of what is going on inside of the person who writes the comment, okay? And why would I let someone's comment of someone that I don't even know affect me in helping like others in terms of like making videos, etc.? Like, I'm not going to. It doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, everything to do with judgment is all very neutral. I said it in another video. If you respond to my video, you comment something good and it's like, thanks for the video, whatever. Like, don't get me wrong, I appreciate it. And thank you. But it's neutral, you know, it doesn't raise my ego. And if I got a bad comment, it doesn't downgrade my ego, because at the end of the day, you know, you don't have to allow the judgment of others to get inside of you, especially when you realize that the judgment of others is really just a direct reflection of what is going on inside of them, okay? The other thing I want to touch on here is being able to create space and energetic space between you and other people. Because when you are a people pleaser, you will feel very absorbent to everyone else's energy. You walk into the room, you can feel everyone else's energy. You talk to someone, you absorb their energy, and it can be really draining. Even if the energy is positive, it's just like you take it all in, right? And a technique that's really helpful is called the frame technique, which is a psychological technique. But essentially, like, if you look at a flame, you can practice on the in-breath looking at the actual flame itself, and then on the out-breath looking at the peripheral of the frame. And through a particular way of guided meditation through this, where you're just looking at a flame, it helps you understand how that energy is in the flame and your energy is here and you're just observing it, right? Like imagine if every time you walked into the room, your energy was in you and everyone else's energy was in their bodies. You would feel so much less fatigued, right? And I always, call myself a very introverted person. I am. I'm an introvert. It's just the way I am. But part of that story that I told myself was I'm introverted, so therefore being around people or being social is very draining for me. I'm not built for it, etc. But then if you just change the story to, for example, I changed the story of I'm an introvert. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that I can't keep my energy in me and people can't keep their energy in theirs. And especially with energy, I remember like a psychologist a couple of years ago told me to imagine a bubble. Imagine you're walking around inside this bubble and whatever anyone says or does just bounces back off you. It's like, I don't want to walk around the rest of my life imagining I'm inside of like some bubble. Instead, I just changed my identity and my beliefs around all of this. Firstly, I don't have to go and do what someone else is asking me to do. And again, that comes from like being an athlete as well. You do people please all the time being an athlete. You're trying to please your coaches, the judges, etc. And there's a payoff for it, okay? And then you go into normal life and you're like, okay, pleasing everyone else, there's a positive payoff. That of which you might realize now there's actually a huge negative payoff and it's not worth it. And just being in your own energy is so much more valuable than any amount of people pleasing you could give anyway, okay? If I am going to be of service to someone, if I am going to spend time with someone, it's because I want to, okay? And secondly, if I am going to spend time with someone and I am going to be of service to them, how am I of best service to them anyway? By not abandoning myself, by being my true self, by expressing my own energy and my own values, etc. That's how you truly connect with people. That's how you are truly of service to people, And so I guess it comes back to the question, and a good way to end this is just asking yourself the question, what are your values? What values do you want to represent? I decided I no longer want to represent the value of being a people pleaser because actually to me now that is not a value. I value authenticity. I value people who have healthy boundaries for themselves, but I also value myself more when I have my own healthy boundaries. I like myself a lot more when I respect my own energy. I like myself so much more when I can walk into a room and meet someone and not pretend to like them and be like, oh my God, it's so lovely to meet you. And instead be like, it's nice to meet you. How do you know it's so lovely to meet someone until you know them, And I really did, and so many athletes, again, they are an entrepreneur at people pleasing. They are an entrepreneur of giving out their energy to everything else and everyone else, which just leaves them feeling exhausted. And you can never find your true self, you can never find your most authentic self or your higher purpose, etc., until you are authentic. And the way to be authentic is to be in your own energy and discover what your own energy is or your own values, right? So again, what are your values? What do your values represent? What values do you want to change? And do the values, change the values, decide your values for you, not for anyone else, okay? People go on decades of their life being people pleasers. the people I've watched in my life who people please are so in the circle of it, like the repetition of it, that they have told that story to themselves so many times, and it's just so sad to watch, honestly. It's really sad to watch, because that person is daily, every hour, abandoning themselves, and at times, surely they're actually unaware of it. It's like, if you can abandon yourself that much, maybe it's subconscious. Maybe you're not even aware of this. I was only aware of the people-pleasing kind of thing when I stopped being an athlete, and I saw myself still trying to please others, but they weren't coaches and they weren't judges. They were just people, you know? And I was like, why am I trying to please like someone else? But it is really sad. So, you know, if you are a people pleaser, it's good to kind of track back and understand, where did this people pleasing idea come from? Where did the story originate? Most likely from mum and dad, but then it may have been accelerated or, you know, more pronounced as you became an athlete and endeavored in your athletic desires, because, you know, there was such a strong payoff to pleasing everyone else. But as I said before, you know, I abandoned myself as an athlete for years, okay? Not to get too off track, but I was in pain in my ankles from the age of 13. And that pain never stopped. The pain on the right foot stopped once I got 4 surgeries to it, and I have the best right foot ever, by the way. Couldn't have asked for a better right foot. But the left foot, obviously, at the time of filming this video, is still chronically in pain and stuff like that. And to me, that's a lesson of, like, a physical representation of self-abandonment for years. Pushing through the pain to please everyone else because there was a payoff. The payoff of living a better life, the payoff of being around people like-minded, the payoff of doing something that I loved. But in doing so, the other payoff was negative. It was of abandoning myself and making the issues even worse and worse and worse, you know? And so I reflect on, you know, my career a lot, because I talk about athletic careers a lot on here. And one thing I've come to terms with is, and reflected on a lot, is it's so hard to not believe that it didn't happen for a reason. But like, even in the case that it didn't happen for a reason, whatever story you want to believe, okay? You have your own judgment. I don't mind. I don't care. Thing is, it's like, it is a literal physical representation that I'm reminded of every day, of the negative payoffs of people pleasing. And it's a physical representation of self-abandonment. That's literally what it is. Okay? If someone's in pain, usually they will stop doing the thing that puts them in pain. I did the opposite. I kept doing the thing that put me in more and more and more pain. The pain added up, more and more and more, year by year by year by year, and then eventually month by month, and then eventually week by week. And I kept doing it. So I've definitely learnt my lesson with people pleasing, and I could talk about it all day. But I guess one thing to take away from this video is, you know, you've only got one life to live. We're all gonna die one day. And I don't know if you guys know who Alex Hormozi is, but like, I don't know, I think he's probably in his 30s or 40s, I'm not sure. And he wears like Crocs and the same pants, the same singlet, and this like long sleeve and a cap. And he makes billions of dollars. And he wears like just these really regular clothes and the same clothes every day, right? Whereas in comparison to his wife, Layla Hormozi, she dresses up so much. She has a beautiful makeup, hair done, you know, all the high-end materialistic things. And, you know, he talks about it and he's like, well, you know what? If it wouldn't bother me when I'm 80, why is it bothering me now? You know? Like he knows that people aren't going to care what he wears when he's 80. So he doesn't let the judgment of others affect him when he's, you know, 30 or 40 or however old he is. But that's it for today's video, guys. I will make a meditation on the frame technique, which is more of a practical side to this, and, you know, learning how to space your own energy and keep your own energy within you and not be so absorbent to everyone else's energy, because people pleasers often have that characteristic to themselves. So watch out for that one. If you like this video, drop a like, and if you haven't subscribed already, my goodness, then hit the subscribe button. We do appreciate it. I said we. It's only me running the show right now, but oh dear, I've been talking too much. This is what happens when I talk too much. Thanks for watching. See ya.